This is a 34-year-old Anthony Joshua. This is a terrifying human being. Terrifying. And he's got that one punch nuclear power. One punch. And he's fast. He's going to be terrifying. And he's going to have a lot to prove. He's going to be very angry that Jake Paul wants to fight him.
Joe Rogan just destroyed Jake Paul after dropping shocking new details about the Anthony Joshua fight. And trust me, this was more than a gentle wake-up call. It was a full-blown reality slap. He exposed the terrifying truth behind what Jake is actually walking into, and the brutality in Rogan's tone said everything.
Realistically, it's one of the craziest propositions of all time.
Jake Paul walking into a ring with Anthony Joshua isn't a bold career move. In Joe Rogan's eyes, it's a full-blown, high-risk gamble that borders on madness, and Rogan doesn't sugarcoat a single part of it. He flat-out calls this matchup one of the craziest propositions ever made in modern boxing, because to him, the shift Jake is making is big as well as catastrophic.
You take a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're gonna fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division.
Rogan points out that Jake's last high-profile bout was against Mike Tyson, a 58-year-old legend who wasn't moving at anything close to prime speed. But now, suddenly, Jake wants to jump from that to a prime, explosive 250-pound destroyer who's spent years dismantling world champions. Rogan can't wrap his head around it, and honestly, neither can most of the boxing world. The gap in danger, the jump in risk, it's the kind of leap Rogan believes no one with self-preservation instincts should take.
It's like you're dealing with a guy who's an Olympic gold medalist, and he's enormous, and he's got vicious knockout power, and he's got immense amount of experience at world-class levels.
And the way Rogan talks about Anthony Joshua is chilling. He calls Joshua terrifying, not because of the highlight reels everyone's seen, but because Joshua's power is paired with discipline, technique, and a level of athletic efficiency you just don't see in celebrity boxing.
The timing in that right hand, just spectacular.
That's stepping in as well.
Over the top. I mean, that was a full force shot to the temple. I mean, he's Fucksville right now.
Rogan says Joshua hits like a truck but moves like a middleweight, and he means it. He's watched Joshua crack world-class fighters, big, strong, elite fighters, with shots that instantly shut off the lights. So when Jake Paul signs up for that sort of danger, Rogan sees it as a disaster waiting to happen. He keeps repeating that the very idea of this matchup is wild, not brave, not genius, not strategic, just wild. A decision you can't logically justify without mentioning ego, delusion, or a paycheck with too many zeros. Then comes the part Rogan really digs into, the physical mismatch. Not just height and weight, but functional size. Jake Paul walks around somewhere between 199 and 220 pounds, depending on the camp. Anthony Joshua gets trimmed down to 245 only because the contract forces him to. Rogan reminds people that Joshua normally sits well above that, sometimes pushing 260, even 270 in his heavier training stretches.
And there's some sort of a rehydration clause. Listen, kids, it ain't gonna matter. You know, there's not a chance that Anthony Joshua is not going to just lose the weight beforehand. He's not going to come in drained. What he's going to do is just do extra cardio.
So even this reduced Joshua is still a mountain compared to Jake. Rogan breaks down that 5-inch height difference and the 6-inch reach difference like they're red flags stapled across the fight poster. Joshua doesn't just have reach. He uses every inch of it with ruthless precision. His jab is a setup tool and a weapon. His right hand, according to Rogan, is like a punishment device. Something that can end a fight the second it lands.
Okay, look, Usyk beat him, and he beat him twice, and Andy Ruiz caught him in the first fight and dropped him and stopped him. It was spectacular. Andy Ruiz is super fucking talented. Usyk is perhaps the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time.
And Rogan didn't stop there. He also points out the resumes, and this part hits hard. Jake Paul has fought Tommy Fury, who beat him. And yes, Jake has beaten former UFC champions, a YouTuber, and a basketball player. Strong names for entertainment, but nowhere near the level of the men Joshua has faced. Joshua's resume is terrifying. Vladimir Klitschko, Joseph Parker, Alexander Povetkin, Andy Ruiz, Francis Ngannou, Alexander Usyk, actual monsters, multiple world champions, big men with long amateur backgrounds and decades of high-level ring IQ. Rogan brings this up to underline a painful truth. Jake Paul is stepping into a reality he's never experienced before. Joshua isn't a retired fighter. He isn't washed. He isn't slow, and he isn't a novelty opponent. He's a killer with 25 wins, 25 knockouts, and the kind of muscle memory that ends fights without thinking.
This YouTuber who's fought Tommy Fury, who's a legit boxer, and a couple other guys that were legit boxers. That's it. Like everyone else he's fought Ben Askren, who was really a wrestler. He fought Tyron Woodley, who was an elite MMA fighter, but, not an elite boxer.
And that's why Rogan says this isn't even the same sport level. This is nightmare fuel. In Rogan's mind, Jake isn't moving up in competition. He's accelerating straight into the deep end of elite heavyweight boxing with no breaks and no floaties. Rogan talks about the speed difference, the timing difference, the footwork difference, all the technical layers Jake has never had to solve. Fury gave him trouble. Woodley dropped him. Anderson Silva outboxed him for long stretches. Rogan brings all this up because if Jake struggled with those men, what happens when Anthony Joshua steps across from him ready to make a statement?
And that's just going to make him more dangerous. He's going to be terrifying, and he's going to have a lot to prove. He's going to be very angry that Jake Paul wants to fight him.
Rogan believes Joshua will show up angry, motivated, and insulted by the idea that a YouTuber could stand across from him. And that's the emotional part Rogan keeps circling back to. Joshua's pride, Joshua's frustration, Joshua's need to remind everyone who he is. Rogan says that alone makes this fight dangerous, because an angry Anthony Joshua is a completely different animal. He doesn't play, he doesn't pity opponents. He erases them.
This is a 34-year-old Anthony Joshua. This is a terrifying human being. Terrifying.
When Rogan unloads on this matchup, he isn't just being dramatic. He's laying out a truth fans might not want to hear. Jake Paul isn't just fighting a bigger man. He's fighting a man who lives in a different universe of combat. A universe built on Olympic gold, world titles, and a knockout record that reads like a demolition list. And to Rogan, the scariest part is simple. Jake has no idea what that kind of punch feels like.
And then Joshua, check out this combination he hits him with. I mean, dude, the speed that he hits him with this, he's so dangerous, man.
Joshua's highlight reel is the part Rogan keeps coming back to, because that's where the real horror show begins. Rogan practically begs people to go re-watch the Francis Ngannou knockout, not for entertainment, but as a public safety announcement. He calls it the perfect exhibit of Joshua's freakish timing, speed, and that explosive piston-like right hand. Rogan breaks the whole thing down like he's narrating a crime scene. The way Joshua steps in, the angle he picks, the way Ngannou, a man built like a superhuman action figure, gets folded in half by a single clean shot. And Ngannou isn't some random heavyweight either.
Jake Paul's 6'1" versus 6'6" Anthony Joshua. Jake weighed in for the Tyson fight at 199.
Yeah.
Joshua against Ngannou was 252.
6'6". Not just 6'6", but 6'6", and knows how to use every fucking inch of it.
This guy sent Tyson Fury to the canvas. The same Tyson Fury who's 6'9", 270 pounds, and basically built like a skyscraper with gloves on. And yet, Joshua walked in and erased Ngannou in minutes, like he was deleting a file from the desktop. Rogan keeps emphasizing this because people somehow keep underestimating Joshua. They talk like Jake is facing just another hitter, while Joshua is out here doing demolition work on fighters who themselves are knockout machines.
Again, a guy who survived Usyk twice. You saw what Usyk did to Dubois? You see Usyk take out Dubois? Did you see that? I mean, that's the Usyk you're talking about. There's an Usyk that rocked Tyson Fury, who's fucking 6'9".
So,
in my opinion, the most skillful heavyweight of all time. Twice. And you're going to go box him? And the toughest guy you fought before was 40 years old Anderson Silva? That was the toughest guy so far you fought?
And then there's the Usyk and Ruiz examples Rogan pulls out like receipts. He points out that Joshua has fought arguably the most technically skilled heavyweight of this era, Alexander Usyk, twice. Those fights force Joshua to adjust, adapt, and evolve. Rogan stresses that you never come out of a fight with Usyk as the same fighter you were going in. The timing, the patience, the footwork. Joshua learned all of that at the highest possible level. And the Ruiz fights? Those show Joshua's resilience. He loses, recalculates, humbles himself, and comes back smarter. Rogan loves that storyline because it proves something Jake has never had to do. get dropped, get embarrassed, get broken down, and still find a way to climb back into world championship form. Rogan uses these examples to paint a picture that's honestly brutal. Joshua has lived through wars Jake has only watched on TV.
Knows how to keep that stick in your face. He was keep that jab in his face, and that right hand, if it hits you, you're fucked.
Then we get into the weight cut myth, and Rogan has zero patience for this one. Every time someone says, but Joshua has to weigh 245. That helps Jake. Rogan practically bursts out laughing. He explains that all this does is turn Joshua into a lighter, faster, more efficient monster. Joshua at 245 is sharpened. Rogan says this version of Joshua is lean, spring-loaded, and ready to explode. He's not draining down like a fighter cutting to 147 or 160. He's just tightening up. That's it. And Rogan reminds fans that the idea of a rehydration clause saving Jake is pure delusion. He jokes that if people think Joshua at 250 is bad, wait until they see Joshua at 245. A version with more stamina, more speed, and no unnecessary bulk slowing him down. Rogan describes it as the nightmare scenario. Jake ends up fighting not just the usual Joshua, but a far fresher, more conditioned, more dangerous iteration.
1988 Mike Tyson, full chaos. That's what I was hoping for.
We walked out like that.
Yeah, it looked like it. Yeah, but that's what everybody signed up for.
And this leads Rogan straight into the psychological storm he thinks Jake is walking into. Rogan believes Joshua is genuinely offended that a YouTuber is stepping into the ring like he's earned the right to be there. And when Joshua's offended, Rogan says the switch flips. There's no politeness, no patience, and no adjustments for safety. Rogan brings up how Jake versus Tyson looked like a nostalgia show with Tyson carrying him at moments. Rogan laughs at the idea. There's no holding back here, he says.
Because Joshua is still competitive in the heavyweight division, and he's only doing this for money.
Joshua is still part of the heavyweight title conversation. He's still fighting for legacy. He still feels the pressure to prove he belongs among the top ranks. He can't risk looking soft. He can't risk fans accusing him of going easy. And Rogan warns that the moment Joshua feels even slightly disrespected by the public, by Jake, or by the media hype, he will respond in the most violent way a professional fighter can, by making an example out of Jake Paul.
Friend, I don't think this is that. I don't think this is that at all. First of all, it can't be that, because Joshua is still competitive in the heavyweight division, and he's only doing this for money.
Rogan's big point is simple. If Joshua goes soft, the world calls the fight fixed. If he goes hard, he does what he always does, knock people out. So which one do you think he's picking? Rogan thinks Joshua is coming into this fight angry, insulted, and ready to shut down every ounce of circus energy surrounding Jake Paul's boxing career. And to Rogan, that emotional cocktail is far scarier than any punch Joshua has ever thrown.
Tyson versus Jake, that both of them were sort of pulling punches and not fully letting it go.
I think that's a different deal.
And let me tell you, Rogan can't get over how bizarre that Tyson fight looked. And honestly, he's not wrong. He practically calls it a glorified sparring session. Now, two guys tapping each other like they were checking range instead of trying to end each other's night. Rogan points out the weird energy of the whole thing. Tyson throwing half-speed hooks. Jake backing up like he's being respectful of his uncle at a family barbecue. Nobody wanted to look too bad. Nobody wanted to go full throttle, and Rogan has a theory for why it all felt so gentle. Maybe Tyson pulled back because he actually likes Jake. Maybe Jake didn't want to detonate Tyson's 58-year-old body on live television. Or maybe both men were just trying to protect the bag. Either way, Rogan says it outright. That was not a real heavyweight dogfight, and people need to stop acting like it was.
I think that's a different deal, you know?
Do you think there was something probably just below the table?
I do not know. I do not know if it was said. I do not know if it was understood. I do not know.
In your professional opinion, based on what you saw, do you think that the people were holding back?
It definitely looked like sparring.
And this is where Rogan gets animated, because he knows people are comparing that Tyson fight to what's coming with Joshua. He shuts that conversation down instantly. He says Joshua is not Jake's buddy, he's not nostalgic, and he's not stepping into the ring to teach the kid some lessons. Joshua's stepping in as an active, functioning championship-level heavyweight with zero obligation to keep anything civilized. Rogan puts it beautifully and brutally.
Anthony Joshua, you carried the torch for the boxing community. Because I know a lot of like straight up boxers, and they absolutely felt that way.
Yeah.
Like this is what needed to happen. These guys can't come over from MMA and think they can box the best.
He says Joshua is a specialist at putting knuckles through your brain. No sympathy, no holding back, and no smiling between rounds. Joshua is there to remind everyone that this is professional boxing, not a YouTube charity exhibition. Rogan wants Jake's fans to understand one thing clearly. Whatever you saw with Tyson, erase it from your mind. None of that applies here. Joshua is the real storm.
I should...
Caveat.
Yeah, here's the caveat. This might earn him $200 million. So if it earns him so much money...
Joshua or Jake Paul? Oh,
Joshua, like either one. How much money is
$200
involved?
million?
Oh, dude, total prize purse for Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua is $184 million.
Then Rogan jumps into the part everyone loves talking about, the money, and this one is insane even by boxing standards. He breaks down the reported $184 million purse like it's monopoly money being thrown around by billionaires just for fun. A 50-50 split. $92 million each just to show up and risk their teeth. And then there's Jake's mysterious tweet about a $267 million bag. Rogan jokes that Jake just casually drops a $250 million number like he's ordering a pizza. That one tweet sent the internet into a frenzy, but it also shines a light on the real engine behind this fight. Saudi money. Rogan reminds viewers that the Saudis have a habit of doing whatever it takes to make mega fights happen, even if it means writing checks that look like GDP numbers.
The thing about Anthony Joshua, if he loses this, so let's say he's only getting the 92 million, which I bet he's getting more. Let's say he's getting 92 million. If he loses this fight, he misses out on that Saudi money because they could set up a Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua fight, and each one of them gets $200 million.
But the most important part of Rogan's money rant is the incentive behind it. Joshua isn't just fighting Jake for the payday. This fight links directly to even bigger paydays. We're talking $200 million plus potential for future Tyson Fury or Joseph Parker fights. And that means something crucial. Joshua cannot lose here. There is too much at stake, too much money, too many future opportunities. Rogan says it flat out. For Joshua, losing to Jake Paul would be financially catastrophic. He would be throwing away generational wealth. And that's exactly why, according to Rogan, Joshua is going to fight with maximum violence. There is no world where he takes this lightly. There is no scenario where he coasted, not with 9 figures waiting down the line. And after ripping apart the money side, Rogan moves straight into Jake's resume, which he practically disassembles piece by piece. He starts listing Jake's opponents like he's reading from a comedy script. A retired NBA player, a 40-plus Anderson Silva, 2 retired MMA fighters, Tyron Woodley twice, and a wrestler. Rogan respects Jake for stepping into the ring at all, but he's brutally honest about the competition. These were not heavyweights. These were not prime athletes. These were names, entertaining names, business-friendly names, but not the type of fighters who prepare you for Anthony Joshua.
You've lost to Tommy Fury, who's a very good boxer, but this is a giant Olympic gold medalist heavyweight. I mean, Anthony Joshua is fucking
Here's
terrifying.
the thing that nightmares are made of.
And then comes the Tommy Fury fight, the one Rogan calls Jake's only real boxing test. The only time Jake fought someone who actually grew up in a boxing family. And it was a messy, scrappy, controversial performance, with Jake struggling in areas that Joshua considers warm-up drills. Rogan uses all of this to highlight something pretty big. Jake has never fought anyone who punches like Joshua. No one who moves like Joshua. No one with the pedigree, the violence, the experience, or the championship level instincts. Rogan says Jake isn't just stepping up a level, he's skipping 10 levels and running straight into the deep end of the pool with a guy who doesn't know how to swim slowly. So Rogan frames Jake's decision to take this fight as a bizarre mix of ambition, self-belief, delusion, adrenaline, and a desperate hunger for legitimacy. He even gives Jake credit for having guts. Because you'd have to be fearless, or out of your mind, to sign a contract with Anthony Joshua. But Rogan makes the final point crystal clear. That combination of ambition and delusion usually leads to disaster. And in this case, he's expecting exactly that.
And he's got that one-punch nuclear power. One punch. And he's fast.
Rogan keeps circling back to one line, and every time he says it, it hits harder. I don't want to be Jake Paul standing across from Anthony Joshua. And coming from Rogan, that's not trash talk, that's a survival warning. He says it with this mix of honesty and disbelief, like he still can't wrap his head around how Jake convinced himself this was a good idea. Rogan talks about Joshua the way people talk about natural disasters. Not evil, not malicious, just something powerful enough that you should avoid it at all costs.
Anthony Joshua has that kind of speed. That it's the kind
With
of thing
252 pounds
if you don't
behind it.
have the skill to get away from that kind of power, what happens is Francis Ngannou and Anthony Joshua.
And then Rogan gets poetic in the scariest way. He calls Joshua nightmares made real, the exact combination of size, speed, and skill that makes heavyweights terrifying. It's not just that Joshua hits hard. Lots of fighters hit hard. Joshua hits with that clean, technical precision that shuts lights off instantly. Rogan even describes Joshua's right hand as temple-shattering power, the kind of punch that doesn't just hurt, that rearranges your plans for the next 6 months. He says that hand has nuclear potential, which is a dramatic way of saying if it lands, someone is going to sleep.
Listen, it really depends on who's setting it up. Netflix doesn't have to tell you how much they're paying.
But the most interesting part is Rogan's bottom line prediction. He says, if Anthony Joshua doesn't try to knock Jake Paul out, the entire world will immediately scream fix. That's how big the power gap is. That's how massive the expectation is. According to Rogan, the only outcome that feels believable is Joshua trying to punch a hole straight through Jake, because anything less looks suspicious. It's a harsh, cold assessment that leaves no wiggle room. Joshua has to be violent just to protect his own credibility. Then, Rogan shifts into the final reality check, and this is where he stops joking and gets brutally honest. He says this fight is the line between Jake being legit or delusional. No gray area, no middle ground. If Jake somehow survives, he earns more respect than he's ever had, and if he gets knocked out, well, Rogan says that might actually increase the respect people give him, because at least he stepped in there with an Olympic gold medalist heavyweight who has 25 knockouts. In Rogan's mind, Jake's only path to respect is pain, a lot of it. But he makes something else clear. This is a defining night for Anthony Joshua too. Not because he needs Jake for legacy, but because the stakes tied to this fight are monstrous. Joshua is right on the edge of securing a future worth hundreds of millions. Fury rematches, Parker fights, global mega events, and a loss to Jake Paul sets everything off. Rogan frames it perfectly. Joshua is standing at a crossroads between legacy and generational wealth. He can't slip, he can't coast, he has to crush. And that's when Rogan delivers the line that chills everyone listening. Jake Paul is walking into the most dangerous moment of his life.